If you want to make the most of your days, if you feel like there must be a way for you to incorporate things that you need to, but also want to do, then you'll need a good plan to make this happen. And that's exactly what we'll be talking about here today. Hi friends, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Marielle. I'm a corporate working mom with a master's degree in psychology. I have a 2-year-old and baby number 2 on the way. And here I talk about all things productivity, work-life balance, motherhood, relationships, and just becoming your best self. So stick around if you want to see more of that. The ways that you spend your time and energy are so important. So you first and foremost need to ask yourself the following questions. What are my priorities? What are my goals? And what do I want to focus in the season of life? The answers to these questions will become your foundation, if you will, your pillars to guide you to be able to decide what you want to include in your daily and your weekly routine. If you, for instance, know that you're focusing on your health right now, then you might want to make sure that you're incorporating movement daily, that you're putting time in to plan your meals. These are actions that will get you towards that goal and that focus that you're working on, which is your health. Essentially, it's important to first know your overarching goals so that you can break them down into actionable tasks that you can do daily and weekly. Let's start with your weekly planning. Take a look at your week and think about all the things that are coming up this coming week. Maybe you have a birthday party that you need to plan, or family coming over, or a deadline that you need to meet. You first need to take those things into account so that you can plan your week wisely. And then after those, you need to look at the recurring things that you need to get done every week. So look at it for like chores, for instance, that you need to do weekly. How are you able to plan these recurring tasks in a way that will make your week flow nicely? You'll need to keep your weekly goals in mind when you plan your week, and then you'll also need to look at the recurring tasks. So when you're planning your week, you need to think about all the things that are coming up, the important things. Then you need to think about all the recurring things that need to be done every week. And you also need to make sure that you're keeping your weekly goals in mind. So for the recurring tasks, let's just take chores, for instance, because we all have to do chores, unfortunately. I've learned that in this season of my life, I'm not able to spend a whole day on chores anymore. It's very rare if I'm able to do that because I have way too many things to do and I have a little one now, and it's just not feasible for my season of life. Before we had kids, we used to be able to dedicate like half a Saturday, for instance, or half a Sunday, or even like a whole Sunday to be able to get chores done, but that's not the case anymore. So you need to think about what works best for you. So for instance, for us, what works best for us is to break it down into the different days. So for instance, on Wednesdays and Sundays, I'm vacuuming the floors. On Saturdays, I meal prep and do the laundry. On Thursdays, I clean the bathrooms. And then every day I do some little tasks that need to be done every day, like for instance, like picking up things, tidying up, doing the dishes, and making sure that the kitchen is clean. So there's just some things that you need to do daily, but the bigger tasks you can assign to different days. I find that batching repeated tasks and dedicating days for certain things really helps me to make the most of my time. So for instance, I have a full-time job, but I also want to make sure that I'm giving enough time to create my videos and put up content on YouTube. For that to work as seamlessly as possible, I need to make sure that I'm planning enough time to do all of my tasks. If I have an hour every day to work on YouTube, then I ask myself, how can I best use this time so that I'm not procrastinating or wasting it? So I like assigning different days to different tasks. So for instance, in this YouTube example, Mondays are usually my planning days, Tuesdays are my filming days, Wednesdays are when I edit, Thursdays I do my research, and then Fridays I script my videos. That's just an example of how you can delegate a task every day of the week so that you can break it down and it doesn't seem like such an overwhelming and daunting project. Now moving on to our daily routines. These are just basically bite-sized version of the weekly routines. So similar to the weekly one, you need to think about what's coming up in your day. So any appointments that you have, any deadlines, any calls that you might have during the day, you'll need to start with those. Any non-negotiables that you might have, you need to start with those first and slot those in first in your schedule. Once you have those in your schedule, then you're able to see your whole day, and then you can realistically plan for the rest of the time that you do have. and then know how much time you have left for each task that you want to get done that day. So in my daily routines, I like incorporating my morning and my evening routines. I also have a work routine, and I also make sure to incorporate time for buffers and for rest, because it's important to note that we need some time to rest. We need some time to recuperate after different tasks, especially if a task is very time consuming, is very draining. You need to make sure that you're putting in buffers and rest time to just make it realistic for you. If you're able to do the things in a shorter amount of time and you have more time than you thought, all the better, right? But it's much better to have that kind of problem than to always be trying to catch up on things because you didn't plan enough time for it. Once you have your morning routine, your evening routines, your work routines, think about your daily tasks and your daily habits that you want to hit. So for instance, I like to make sure that I'm incorporating some kind of movement every day. I don't exercise every single day, but I make sure that I'm incorporating movement in. So on the days that I don't exercise, and I make sure to take a little walk, like 15-30 minute walk every day if I'm not exercising. Think about your daily habits that you want to incorporate. For example, meditating, reading a book, making time for skincare, affirmations, journaling, all those things you can put into your daily routine. So it's up to you which ones make most sense for you and which ones you actually want to hit every single day. Or maybe if you want to mix it up, you can have the different options, because I do that. So it depends. For instance, for me, in my morning routine, I don't do exactly the same morning routine every single day because it's just not realistic for me. There are days when I have a little bit more time in the morning, and there are days when I have a little bit less time in the morning. So on the days that I'm able to wake up early, then I can do the more elaborate routine, and the days where I sleep in a little bit more, then I can do a shortened version of the routine, let's say. So I find time blocking very, very helpful for myself to get things done, because when I time block things, I can see my schedule more clearly. I can see exactly how much time I have to do a certain thing and not just go on forever doing the thing. So if you give yourself an hour, you'll get that task done in an hour. And if you give yourself 3 hours to do the same task, you will get that same task done in 3 hours. Sometimes it's a bit of a mindset thing where you know that you have so much time to get this thing done, so you do take that much time. And if you know that you only give yourself this short amount of time, then you're more motivated to get the thing done in that amount of time that you have. So I really believe in that, and I feel like it really does work. And it's good to give yourself a deadline to be able to help motivate you and get things going, because sometimes when you give yourself too much time, it doesn't work out in your favor, because you feel like it's okay, I have so much time, end up getting lost in something else, or you end up procrastinating because you feel like you have so much time anyway, and then before you know it, the time is done, and then you weren't able to even finish the task. So do with it what you will. It depends on each person, what works for them. For me, it works for me to do it like that. You need to also know yourself and your own tendencies to know what works best for you. When I say time blocking, it doesn't have to be exactly to the minute. I've done that before where I first learned about time blocking. I was very strict about it, and I really wanted to make sure that I'm done to the minute or even before the time is finished. But it's just not realistic, and sometimes you go over the time. Sometimes you go under the time. It's completely fine, but it gives you a good indication of when you will be done with a certain task. And when you do this with your recurring tasks, especially tasks that always come up every single day or every single week, then you get a better idea of how much time you actually need for this task. And for example, today I overestimated it, and tomorrow I'll estimate it better, because I know from my experience of today and yesterday, for instance, that it only takes me this much time, or I need actually more time to be able to do this task. The more that you do it, the more that you repeat it. It's kind of like practice makes perfect. The more that you repeat it for these recurring tasks, the better you will be at knowing exactly how much time you need for these tasks. For my daily planning and my daily routines, I also like to make sure that I'm focusing on myself first thing, and also to close off the day, I'm also focusing on myself. So whether it's just 30 minutes, whether it's just 15 minutes, first thing in the day or last thing of the day, I want to make sure that I'm doing something for myself to make myself feel a little bit taken care of, even if it's very hectic in life sometimes. And there are times when I have hours to do this, for instance, like an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening, or even more, which is amazing. But it's not the case every single day, of course. There are days when I just have a few minutes in the morning, I just have a few minutes at the end of the day, but it does really help me to feel a bit more grounded and a bit more like myself when I'm able to do these things for myself. So when I do things for myself, for instance, reading a book, I really love reading books just before falling asleep because it helps my brain shut off and relax, and helps take my mind off of things. I find it really important for me to read my book, even if I just have 10 minutes. If there's nothing else that I can do that evening, I will read my book. But yeah, there's just some things that for me are just really important for me to do every day or every night. And there are some things that are okay, if I don't get to do it today, that is fine, I can do it again tomorrow. So it's just up to you what works best for you and what you feel you need the most at the time. So I like having routines because they help me give some structure to my days and to my weeks, so that I know what's coming up and what I can expect and how much time I actually have realistically. But there are obviously some days where my ideal routines don't work. So for instance, if I'm not feeling that great, if I'm maybe on my period, or if I'm just not feeling my best on that day, I just have low energy, it's nice to have kind of like a bare minimum routine. And on that routine, think about your non-negotiables. So these are for days, by the way, that you're not like really sick and in bed. I'm not telling you that you still need to pull yourself out of bed when you're like really sick and you need to stay in bed. I just mean for those days that you're just like feeling very low energy and don't have as much motivation or as much capacity to give like you normally do. It's nice to have these kind of bare minimum routines that you can fall back on. So for me, what my bare minimum routine is just depending on my energy level. So if I have low energy level, then I can just make sure that I'm doing my non-negotiables, that I'm doing the things that if I have a deadline, I make sure that I finish that. I ask myself this question, like, what can I do today that will have the biggest impact on my goals? What can I do today that will help move the needle forward in the most impactful sense? So there are so many things that we can do. There are so many things that we can do every single day. We have like to-do lists a mile long, and it's just not possible to get every single thing that we want done every single day and still have time for ourselves and still have time for loved ones. We need to be a bit realistic in this sense because we only have 24 hours in a day. So especially when you're not feeling great, you have low energy on that day, make sure that you're just trying to prioritize the small amount of energy and time that you have on that day. And then just for some extra tips is to make sure that you're incorporating some energy giving tasks into your daily and into your weekly routine. So what do I mean by this? There are tasks that drain our energy and there are tasks that give us energy. So I learned this from my therapist, that maybe you should, when you're feeling very unmotivated and very down on yourself, sometimes it's good to look into your routines, into your days, and look into what are the things that you've been doing every day, and see and kind of take a record to see how much of those things are giving you energy and how much of those things are actually draining your energy. So most of the time when we feel very drained and low or burnt out, it's because we've been doing a lot of things that we feel like we need to do and that are actually draining our energy without having things or incorporating things that are actually giving us energy, or that the energy giving tasks are very small compared to the amount of energy draining tasks that we have in a day or a week. So just make sure that you have those sprinkled throughout your day and throughout your week to make sure that you're giving tasks, that you're also giving energy back to yourself. Number 2 is to make sure that you're not overly scheduling things in your calendar. I know I mentioned about time blocking. It's great. It's a great tool to be able to maximize your time, but make sure that you're also putting some open space into your calendar so that you're not just doing, but you also have time to step back and reflect. You also have time to literally do whatever you want and whatever calls to you at that time, because it's important to have like some open space as well to be able to breathe. Because it's happened to me before a few times that I kind of overscheduled my agenda from 9 until 6 to the T, and as much as I felt good after the day, because I felt like, okay, I was able to do so many things, I also felt so exhausted at the end because I did do way too many things and I didn't leave any breathing room for myself. I just did everything that I wanted to get done, and it was great, but it felt very exhausting at the end of the day. So just make sure that you're putting in some space for yourself to just flow and to just do whatever the hell you feel like. Number 3 is to keep in mind the transition phases from one task to another. Because for me, personally, I find this the most difficult when I transition from one task to the next, because this transition is where I usually get sidetracked. This is when I usually see like a little email on there, a little message on there. I check my phone for a second and then I get lost in something else. And then before I know it, I'm like 10-15 minutes into something else completely random that was not in my schedule, that was not as important, and that I basically just wasted time on that. So just be mindful that this is a tricky time where you can very easily get distracted if you're somebody who gets distracted very easily like I do. And to just be mindful of that and make sure that you're keeping track of the time and that you're keeping in mind that you need to transition to the next task shortly. And lastly is that you can set timers if you're feeling unmotivated, or if you're feeling overwhelmed, or if you're feeling distracted. Setting timers is such a great tool to be able to get yourself started. For instance, sometimes I just feel like I really need to clean the kitchen, but I just don't have the energy or the motivation to do that.
I just do not want to clean the kitchen right now.
But I have to. So then one of the things that I've done that really helps me is to set a timer. So let's say I just set a 30-minute timer and then I try to do as much cleaning as I can in that 30 minutes. So yeah, setting timers are super helpful. So feel free to use that if you want. If that helps you, it definitely helps me. Just great to keep yourself accountable. Trying to find balance is not easy and it's not always going to work. But it's great to have a good overview of your schedule so that you can plan for it. You don't always feel like you're always trying to catch up with your to-do list. With this in place, you should have a better sense of where your time and energy are going and are able to consciously decide how you're spending your day and feel like you're a little bit at least on top of your to-do list. I hope this was helpful. Let me know what you think. And remember, this is a tool to help yourself to be able to get towards your goals more easily and faster, so that you can utilize the resources that you do have in a way that works best for you. And with that said, I wish you a great rest of the week and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!